Who are the best mystery authors and writers that you should know about? Hi there, my name is Brian Collins and welcome to the Become a Writer Today channel. Mystery books are incredibly popular. They sell millions of copies every year. But what if you're looking for a good mystery book to read? Should you consider a new book or a book by an old author? I'm going to profile 11 of the best mystery writers and authors. Some of these have passed away, but their books are still selling, while others are still writing prolifically today. Hope you enjoy the content in this profile of the best mystery writers. If you do, please hit thumbs up. And if you want to get more videos like this, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. First up, we have one of my favorite authors of all time. His name is Thomas Harris. He's an American and he was born in 1940. We know him best for his creepy creation, Hannibal Lecter, who's been turned into books, films and TV shows. Now, we first met Hannibal Lecter all the way back in 1981 in Thomas Harris's mystery book, Red Dragon. The follow-up, The Silence of the Lambs, was published in 1988 and it became a cult classic and a bestseller. And of course, it was later turned into an Oscar-winning film starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. Thomas Harris also wrote Hannibal Rising, which to be honest wasn't as good as his previous two books. He then took a huge sabbatical for writing because he found fame a nuisance and he didn't like all of the attention that fame brought to him. And also, I suppose, he was burdened by the weight of the success of Hannibal Lecter. His latest book, Carrie Morey, was published in 2019. And Thomas Harris says about writing mystery and fear books, fear comes with imagination. It's a penalty. It's the price of imagination. Next up, we have James Patterson. He's one of the best-selling authors of all time working today. He releases 3 or 4 books a year with the help of a team of ghost writers. He was born in 1947 and he sold an astonishing 380 plus million books around the world. Some of his more popular books, which have been turned into films, include Along Came a Spider, The Angel Experiment and First to Die. And of course, Along Came a Spider was turned into a film with Morgan Freeman. Now, James Patterson isn't for everybody. I took a masterclass with James Patterson a while ago on masterclass.com. It's fascinating to hear about his writing process. He says he's not burdened with writing literary stories or literary sentences. He just wants to write compelling thrillers and mystery books that his audience will love. And he'll often outline a book quickly and then give it to a co-writer or a ghostwriter who will help him finish it. And he's even collaborated with Bill Clinton on some of his books. Next up is the American novelist Truman Capote. He was born in New Orleans in 1924 and he passed away in 1984. So he had rather a short life when you think about it compared to some other people featured on this list. Now, Truman Capote was famous for being Truman Capote. He was a bit of a celebrity in his day. He wrote popular novels like Breakfast at Tiffany's and Summer Crossing. But it's his true crime book, In Cold Blood, that he is most famous for and where he really demonstrated his literary prowess. The book is written like a novel, but it's actually based on the horrendous murder of 4 members of the Clutter family in Kansas. To write the book, Truman Capote interviewed the murderers Richard Hickok and Perry Smith, and he took thousands and thousands of pages of notes while he interviewed them. And it took him 6 years to turn the story of this murder into a book that's written like a novel. In other words, this was true crime fiction before true crime fiction became a thing. Definitely a book to check out if you're looking for something that has a sense of mystery, a sense of crime, and a sense of horror. And actually, if you're interested in the best true crime authors, I have another video on the channel where I profile some of the best true crime authors, both alive and dead. Dennis Lehane was born in 1965 in Boston. He's worked on big TV shows like The Wire, which is fantastic if you really enjoy crime drama. And he's also worked on a more recent show, Mr. Mercedes, which was actually written by another author who will feature on this list. Now, Dennis Lehane is also famous for his own mystery books. Shutter Island and Gone Baby Gone were both turned into films. But perhaps my favourite book by Dennis Lehane, which was also turned into an Oscar-winning film, is Mystic River. I love the way he's able to weave mystery, crime and suspense into the books that he writes. And he says, there are threads in our lives, you pull on one and everything else gets affected. And it's that thread or that idea that you can see played out in the stories and in the mystery books that he writes. John Grisham was born in 1955. He trained to be a lawyer, but he always wanted to be a writer. His first book was called A Painted House. And did you know it was actually a flop when it was first published? It wasn't until much later when John Grisham's career took off that A Painted House became a success. Actually, I think it's a fantastic read and one of his better works. Some of the books that he's most famous for include The Client, which was turned into a film with Tom Cruise, The Pelican Brief and The Rainmaker. Now, John Grisham's books are fantastic because he's able to draw on his experience working as a lawyer. These days, John Grisham typically writes one book a year, and compared to some other mystery writers and authors, he puts a lot of time, care and attention into crafting something that approaches the quality of a literary novel. Next up is the Swedish author Stieg Larsen. He was born in 1954. He worked as a journalist and a writer, but then he died suddenly in 2004. And unfortunately, he passed away before he could see his fiction become a commercial and creative success. The first book in the Millennium Trilogy of crime, of which he's best known for, is called The Girl in the Dragon Tattoo, and was published in 2005 in Sweden, a year after his death. Later was published in English in, I think it was 2008. And then it became a huge critical success before being turned into a 2011 film directed by David Fincher. Now, it's sad to see that Stieg Larsen didn't get to see his mystery and crime books become successful. However, his books are still a fascinating read, and it's great that you can enjoy The Girl in the Dragon Tattoo both as a book and then go check out the film, even if the film isn't on par with some of David Fincher's other works. Next on this list is P.D. James, aka Phyllis Dorothy James, the Baroness James of Holland Park. She was born in Oxford in 1920. She died in 2014. She's a famous English novelist who is well known for the Adam Dalgliesh series of mysteries and the Cordelia Gray series of mysteries. In fact, she wrote 27 mystery books during her prolific career. She's best known, of course, for her detective fiction, like somebody else on this list. And she said, with the detective story, there was horror. I think one needs to make the murder realistic, but I also think the main attraction isn't the horror, it's the puzzle, the bringing of order out of disorder. Another hugely successful English writer and author, Agatha Christie. She was born in Devon in 1890. She died in 1976. She wrote over 100 books, novels and plays during her career and sold a whopping 1 billion copies. So she pretty much dwarfs everybody on this list. That's not bad for somebody who didn't want to be a writer at first. It was only when she developed influenza as a teenager and her mother prompted her to write some short stories to pass the time that she discovered her love of writing and then poetry. This turned her into a keen observer of the world around her, and she was well known as a listener rather than a talker. She would often take notes in her notebook and then work out plots and potential stories for the mystery novels that she would go on to write. She would spend a lot of time organising these in a notebook rather than decamping to a room or using a typewriter. Then she would dictate the story, send it to a secretary to type up, spend a month revising it and then publish. She's best known for books like Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile and The Crooked House. Another famous detective mystery writer, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He was born in 1859 and he died in 1930. He's best known, of course, for Sherlock Holmes and Watson. But did you know that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually didn't want to be a writer at first? In fact, he trained to become a medical doctor. And while he was in college, he even got an opportunity to work as a medical doctor on a whaling ship that went to Greenland. He was horrified by the whole experience and he eventually wrote up why he found the whole thing distasteful. Now, he worked as a medical doctor for a few years. His first book that introduced Sherlock Holmes to the world is called A Study in Scarlet and was published in 1886. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually at first became better known in the United States than in the United Kingdom. Of course, Sherlock Holmes was serialised and then he became a huge success. Now, before he died, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle said that he wanted to be remembered as a champion of spiritualism and a historical novelist. We may remember him for his novels and for Sherlock Holmes, but I'm not so sure about the spiritualism angle. Another mystery writer you should know about, Daphne du Maurier. She rose to fame as a mystery writer after the film director Alfred Hitchcock made a film based on her short story, The Birds, and her novel, Rebecca. Now, when she first published her books, Daphne did not really find critical or commercial success. But today she's well known as one of the most influential writers in the genre. Of course, she sadly passed away, I think it was in the 1980s. Her famous books that you should go and check out if you're looking for some mystery fiction, perhaps from an older author, is Rebecca, Frenchman's Creek, and Jamaica Inn. And she has a fantastic way of being able to sustain tension in her mystery books, unlike many authors working today. The final addition to this list is somebody you've undoubtedly heard of because he's written across a variety of genres, from horror to science fiction to, of course, mystery. He has something for everybody. He sold over 350 million copies of his works worldwide. I am, of course, talking about Stephen King. Now, my personal favourite Stephen King books include It, The Shining, and Misery. Arguably, some of Stephen King's books are more horror than mystery, but he does tend to work elements of mystery into all of his books. It just depends on whether you are amenable to a little bit of science fiction or speculative fiction and a little bit of horror. That said, if you're looking for more of a true crime, mystery bent book and something that's more contemporary by Stephen King than what I've just mentioned, Mr. Mercedes is certainly one that you can check out. And of course, it was turned into a television series which ran for approximately 3 seasons. Stephen King really does have something for everybody, and he's someone that belongs on your mystery book reading list.